Natasha's life changed forever the day the sleek black car skidded off the wet highway and crashed into a ditch, taking with it the lives of her beloved parents. The news had shattered her like glass. Her father, a respected engineer, and her mother, a kind-hearted nurse, had been the foundation of her world. With them gone, 16-year-old Natasha had no one left, no relatives, no godparents, except for the woman her father had married 2 years before his death, Veronica, her stepmother. From the moment Natasha stepped into Veronica's house after the funeral, it stopped being a home and became a prison. The smiling face Veronica had worn during her father's life vanished. Her true nature emerged, cold, cunning, and cruel. And then there was Cynthia, Veronica's daughter from a previous marriage. Cynthia was just a year older than Natasha, but in arrogance and wickedness, she was years ahead. Together, they treated Natasha like a servant. "Clean the floors again. You missed a spot," Cynthia would shout, tossing her designer sandals aside and lounging on the couch like royalty. Natasha did everything: cooking, cleaning, washing clothes by hand, even polishing Cynthia's school shoes. She wasn't allowed to return to school, despite being one of the brightest in her class. Veronica insisted that they couldn't afford the fees, yet Cynthia went to an expensive private school and flaunted new clothes every week. "You should be grateful we even feed you," Veronica often sneered. "You're just a burden we were cursed with." At night, Natasha cried silently on a thin mattress in a cold, windowless storeroom. No one heard her. No one cared. She missed her parents terribly, their warmth, their encouragement, their love. But all that remained were memories and pain. As the years passed, Natasha grew into a quiet beauty with soft features and deep, sorrowful eyes. She never complained. She bore her suffering with silent strength, hoping that one day, somehow, life would change. Then, on her 20th birthday, Veronica called her into the living room. Natasha wiped her hands on her worn apron and nervously entered. Cynthia was sitting beside her mother, grinning maliciously. "We have found you a husband," Veronica said without preamble. Natasha's heart sank. "A husband?" "Yes," Cynthia chimed in. "He's lame, poor, useless to the world, but he's agreed to marry you. This is your chance to stop being a burden to us." Natasha felt the room spin. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Veronica smirked. "You should be thanking us. At least someone is willing to marry a useless girl like you." She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg, but her voice failed her. She had no rights in this house, no choice, no power. And so a date was set. She would marry a man she had never seen, a man they described as a cripple and a pauper. Little did they know, the man they mocked, the man they forced her to marry, was hiding a secret that would soon change everything. The morning of Natasha's wedding was anything but joyous. There were no songs, no smiles, no celebration. Instead, Natasha was given an old, faded gown that had once belonged to Veronica's cousin and forced to do her own hair in front of a cracked mirror. She looked at her reflection and barely recognized the girl staring back, tired, pale, and scared. "Don't waste our time," Veronica barked as she stood by the doorway. "You're lucky he didn't run away after seeing your miserable face." Cynthia cackled as she walked past Natasha, dressed in a dazzling red dress, more glamorous than the bride herself. "Can you believe it, Mum? A poor cripple marrying a poor maid. They're perfect for each other." Natasha fought back tears. Every part of her wanted to run, to escape this trap. But where would she go? She had no family, no money, no friends who could help. Her heart was heavy, but she told herself, endure it. Just one more cruelty, maybe it will be the last. The wedding was held in a small, neglected church at the edge of the city. No decorations, no music, just a priest who seemed too tired to care, and a few hired witnesses to make the union official. Natasha hadn't even seen the groom until she was led to the altar. And there he stood. He was dressed modestly in an oversized suit. His left leg was visibly weaker, forcing him to lean slightly to one side as he stood. His eyes, however, were sharp and deep, quiet, watchful, not cruel, just unreadable. "This is him," Veronica whispered with fake cheerfulness. "His name is Daniel. Be grateful," he agreed. Natasha nodded faintly and took her place beside him. She could feel Cynthia and Veronica smirking behind her, as if they were watching the punchline of a long, bitter joke. The priest read through the vows mechanically. There were no rings, just a handshake and the sound of a pen scratching against paper. And with that, it was done. Natasha was now Mrs. Daniel Watson. After the ceremony, Veronica handed Natasha a small travel bag with her few belongings. "Don't come back. Your place is with your husband now." Natasha looked at Daniel. He hadn't said a word since they met. He simply gestured toward the modest car parked by the roadside and helped her in. The ride was silent. Natasha stared out of the window, unsure of what to feel. Fear, confusion, sadness. But there was something else, curiosity. Who was this man really? Why had he agreed to marry a girl like her, and why did he seem so calm? They drove for nearly an hour out of the city and into the countryside. She assumed they were heading to some old village hut or broken house. But then, the car suddenly turned down a wide, paved private road lined with neatly trimmed hedges and tall trees. Natasha frowned. "Where are we going?" Daniel finally spoke. His voice was deep and smooth. "Home." Minutes later, the car stopped before a large wrought iron gate. It opened automatically, and what stood beyond it stole her breath. A massive estate stretched out in front of them, acres of manicured lawns, fountains, elegant gardens, and at the center of it all, a stunning mansion with white walls, glass balconies, and marble pillars. She stared in disbelief. "This can't be right," she whispered. Daniel gave her a small smile. "It is. Welcome to your new home." Natasha turned to him slowly, her mouth slightly open. "But you're supposed to be poor." Daniel chuckled, stepping out of the car and offering his hand. "That's what your stepmother wanted to believe. I let her." She stared at him, stunned. The man she had been forced to marry was no beggar. He was a billionaire. Natasha stood frozen at the foot of the mansion, unsure if she was dreaming. Her heart pounded as she looked at the sprawling estate, the kind she had only seen in magazines or movies. A mansion this grand couldn't belong to the lame, poor man Veronica had mocked. Daniel walked ahead slowly, his limp more noticeable now, but with each step he held himself with dignity and grace. "Come," he said gently. "There's much to talk about." They entered the mansion through towering doors that opened into a dazzling foyer. A kindly elderly woman greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome home, sir, and you must be Madame Natasha." "Thank you," Natasha replied, still trying to process everything. Daniel led her into a spacious lounge and gestured for her to sit. She sank into the soft leather couch while he remained standing, looking at her with calm intensity. "I owe you an explanation," he began. "But first, I want to be honest with you. I didn't choose you out of pity. I knew what your stepmother was doing to you. I've been watching from afar for months." Natasha's eyes widened. "Watching me?" Daniel nodded. "Your father was once my business partner, a good man. Before he died, he trusted me with something very important, protecting you." Tears welled in Natasha's eyes. "You knew my father?" "Very well. He and I were building a business empire together. But when he died suddenly, I was overseas in recovery after a car accident. I returned to find you under the control of Veronica. I tried to intervene, but she shut every door in my face, so I chose another path." Natasha was trembling now. "You pretended to be poor, so she'd let me go?" "Yes," he replied. "I wanted to see her true colors. I needed to know if you were like them, if you valued money above all. But you weren't. You endured suffering, but you never became bitter or greedy. That's the kind of woman I want by my side." The room was silent, except for Natasha's quiet breaths. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man she was forced to marry had not only known her father, but had also been quietly protecting her all along. "But why would you marry someone like me?" she whispered. Daniel's voice softened. "Because even though the world tried to bury your worth, you still shine. I've seen your strength, your kindness, your patience. Money can buy anything, except those qualities." Natasha's eyes welled with tears again, but this time not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in years, hope. "Still," Daniel added, "this marriage was forced upon you. I won't trap you. If you wish to leave, I will provide for you and ensure you're safe. But if you choose to stay, then you and I can build something real, something powerful." Natasha looked into his eyes. There was no pressure in his gaze, only sincerity. She thought about Veronica's house, about the pain, the humiliation, the cold nights with nothing but hunger and tears. And then she looked around at this new home, not just the mansion, but the promise it held. "I'll stay," she whispered. "Not because of the mansion or the money, but because you saw me when no one else did." A soft smile played at Daniel's lips. Then welcome home, my wife. For the first time in years, Natasha felt like she belonged. But little did she know, this new life was only beginning, and not everyone would accept her happiness so easily. The car door opened, and a man in a crisp navy suit stepped out. He looked sharp and confident, even with a slight limp. Behind him, two security guards followed silently. Veronica rushed out, confused. "Who are you?" The man handed her a small envelope, a gift from Mr. and Mrs. Watson, and a message. "Watson?" she asked, her voice rising. "That cripple?" The man smiled without emotion. "That billionaire." Veronica tore open the envelope and pulled out a note. The handwriting was elegant. "Dear Veronica, thank you for handing over your burden. She is now in a place where she is loved and respected. I married Natasha not out of pity, but because she is worth more than gold. Your loss is my treasure. Daniel Watson." Her hands shook as she read the final line. "Billionaire?" she whispered. The man beside her nodded. "Your son-in-law. You didn't know?" Cynthia came out with a bowl of ice cream and saw the commotion. "Mum, what's happening?" Veronica turned to her, still holding the letter. "He tricked us," she said bitterly. "That man we gave Natasha to, he's not poor. He's one of the richest men in the country." Cynthia dropped her spoon. "What?" Veronica's mind spun with greed and regret. She had treated Natasha like a maid, beaten her down, insulted her, cast her away, and now that same girl was married to a billionaire. She'd lost everything. "We have to fix this," she muttered. "We can still—" "You can't," the man interrupted firmly. "Mr. Watson wanted me to be clear. Neither of you is welcome near his wife. Any attempt to contact her will result in legal action." And with that, he turned and got back into the car, leaving them speechless. Back at the mansion, Natasha was slowly adjusting to her new life. She still woke up early out of habit, expecting to scrub floors or cook breakfast for others. But now, she was gently reminded by the housekeeper, "Madam, you can rest. You're not a maid anymore." Daniel had given her space. He didn't force conversations or affection, but he was kind and attentive. He had even arranged for her to return to school privately with professional tutors. One evening, as they sat in the garden overlooking the moonlit pond, Daniel turned to her. "You don't have to love me now," he said softly, "but I hope one day you'll see me as more than just the man who rescued you." Natasha looked at him with a calm, grateful smile. "You didn't just rescue me, Daniel. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else." For the first time, she reached for his hand. Their fingers touched, and something new began to bloom, something deeper than gratitude, something real. But while peace had come to Natasha, jealousy had begun to fester in Veronica and Cynthia, and jealousy, when fed by greed, never stays silent for long.